Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Space News Pod. This is a show about SpaceX, NASA, and spaceflight. I'm your host, Will Walden. And on today's episode, we're going to be talking about some interesting things that SpaceX is up to as far as space tourism goes. So just recently, SpaceX released some new information on their website about the way that people can book a flight to low Earth orbit in a Dragon capsule. And Jared Isaacman and his crew for the new EVA that's going to be happening. It's going to be an interesting few months when this all happens. Okay, so let's talk about what Jared's going to be doing. They're going to be doing what is considered an EVA for the next human space flight. It's basically like a booked flight, like a plane flight, you book an airliner flight, but you book it to space, right? So Jared spent a bunch of money, millions of dollars, prepping his team, and also prepping the Dragon capsule. And SpaceX and him are working very closely together. And there's a bigger thing here with Jared. Okay, so Jared runs a very successful flight training school. He trains fighter pilots, basically, like jet pilots. And I believe this is the next step for his business, is that he'll start training people to go to space. So he could own that part of space flight. That's what you want to do as a business owner. You want to own certain parts, be the first person or the first entity, the first business to do this. And the only way you can do that is to partner with somebody like SpaceX, who sends people to space in a rocket. Now, with Jared and his crew for the next flights, they're going to be doing an EVA. They have an EVA suit that they worked with SpaceX on for the last year or so, couple of years on this suit. I don't know how long SpaceX has been actually working on this, but I'm sure it's been a long time internally. But Jared and SpaceX have been working really closely together over the last year to bring this thing to fruition and make it feasible for their next flight. So they're going to be doing an EVA. Basically, it's not the same as an old school EVA. Like the shuttle or outside the ISS, they're going to be tethered inside of the Dragon capsule. Everyone's going to be exposed to the vacuum of space. There's going to be 4 participants in this, so everybody inside the capsule will be exposed to the darkness and the vacuum of space. So it's going to be absolutely dangerous, absolutely terrifying. But you're tethered in. You're not going to float out of the capsule, but you need a suit that can withstand those harsh environments. So within the tether, they have life support systems and everything they need to survive while this is happening. Unlike when you're outside of the International Space Station, you have this big, bulky backpack on. There's no room for that in a Dragon capsule. Right? There will be room for that in a Starship. There will be room for that in a Starship. But right now, they're tethered in, umbilicaled in. So the umbilical contains all your life support. If you need to go outside of the capsule, you can do that. We don't know if they're going to be doing any sort of outside capsule maneuvers. We were shown in the press conference the other day that they were thinking about it, and they don't know exactly the duration of that extravehicular activity. So that's what EVA stands for, by the way, is extravehicular activity. Now, they said that the EVA could be a long duration EVA for the first flight. And we don't really know if that's going to happen because it's a first flight. It's a test flight. These 4 people that are going up, it's a test flight. And it could stop in 10 minutes, depending on what's going on. There could be some sort of problem where the EVA starts and they find an issue and they all have to stop it, and they have to come back in the capsule. They have to close the capsule up and go back to normal mission directives, right? And that's okay. Like that's going to happen sometimes in space flight and like new technologies. And SpaceX's spacesuit is basically all new technologies, and it looks pretty similar to their old spacesuit. It's a little bit thicker. It looks like a little bit thicker, but you too can book a flight to low Earth orbit. Your mission duration is usually 3 to 6 days. You orbit around the Earth every 90 minutes, which is beautiful. You're about 300 to 500 kilometers above the Earth, anywhere between 2 and 4 passengers. So you can have you and 3 buddies go up. You can have a cupola. So you're not going to be doing an EVA, but there's going to be a cupola, which is a giant window on the spacecraft. So you could float upside down. There's no upside down in space. Everything's upside down, I guess. But you could be flying, looking at the Earth. In every 90 minutes, you go around the Earth. You could orbit the Earth in 90 minutes. That would be wonderful and beautiful. It's going to cost a couple $1,000,000 per person. 10 million, 10 to 20 million per person, something like that. And then, hopefully it'll be a wonderful experience for you for, 3 days. You get trained by everybody at SpaceX, and hopefully Jared in the future and his crew and his company will start doing spaceflight operations so they can train the people that do the SpaceX flights. Because SpaceX doesn't currently have a lot of spaceflight training personnel, because they go to the International Space Station, and those astronauts are NASA astronauts mainly, or Axiom Space astronauts, something like that. But most of those people are trained via NASA or some government body. Axiom Space, they do a kind of a combination of both. So it looks like Jared is getting into the business of spaceflight, which is incredible because he's already in it, which is saying a lot for this guy, because he did Inspiration 4. He was the captain of the Crew Dragon Resilience, and it launched from Kennedy Space Center for Inspiration 4. They spent a bunch of time up there. And they have the Polaris Dawn program coming up. That's what I was talking about before, the Polaris Dawn program, where they're going to be doing an EVA, but we're not sure how far out they're going to be doing the EVA. They're going to be launching this from Florida, and the Polaris Dawn crew will spend up to 5 days in orbit, during which they will work towards the following objectives. High altitude, they're going to go higher than anybody else has ever flown. They're going to be orbiting through portions of the Van Allen radiation belt. So, checkmate against the people that are flat earthers, or the people that say, oh, we've never been through the Van Allen radiation belt, or whatever. Like, this is going to prove them wrong, which is great. We should probably prove all those people wrong. And they're going to be doing 700 kilometers above the Earth. They're going to be doing an EVA. The first ever commercial extravehicular activity, upgraded from the current IVA suit. They have a new EVA suit. And this is all building to people going to the moon and also going to Mars. And then farther out in the solar system eventually. Right now, we don't really have the technology to get there fast enough. It's going to take a while to get to the outer solar system. So when they do this low Earth orbit stuff, they're only up there for a few days. If you go to the outer solar system, you're going to be in space for a year to get to some of these places, or more. When you go to Mars, it's a long trip. You're not going to be there. It's not going to take a week to get there. It's going to take months to get there. And can you survive, the radiation leaving the Earth's atmosphere, all that, and do EVAs? Because the only way to service Starship on the way to Mars or further is to do an EVA. And this is the first test of these EVA suits for Jared and the crew. So they're going to be up there 700 kilometers doing an EVA. And they're going to be using these EVA suits probably on the way to the moon. If it's a private Starship flight, they're probably going to be using these suits, and they're going to transfer from the regular IVA suits to only these EVA suits. So they'll have one suit that does everything. So the best part is no part, right? So you ditch the old technology, move forward, and use the new technology to better spaceflight. But they needed all those years in the IVA to make it the best suit possible. And then they added on top of that. So now they have the EVA. They'll be the first crew to do a Starlink based communication in space. So they're going to get valuable data for future space communications. And while in orbit, the crew will conduct scientific research. Let's see what they have here. They have ultrasound to monitor, detect, and quantify gas VGE, contributing to studies on human prevalence to decompression sickness. So basically the bends, and also gathering data on the radiation environment, like we were saying before, the Van Allen radiation belt, providing biological samples towards multi-omics analysis for a long-term biobank, and research related to spaceflight association neuro-ocular syndrome, which is a key risk to human health in long-duration spaceflight. So your eyes get wonky in space, and they want to figure out why. And once they figure out the why and how it happens, then they can figure out a way to prevent it in the future. So that's important for long-duration spaceflight when you want to go to, I don't know, Enceladus or something. Enceladus. I said that wrong. Anyway, you want to go to the moon, another planet. Why can't I think of how to say that right now? Anyway, you want to go to the moons of Jupiter, right? And that would be great. But it's going to take you forever. And by the time you get there, your eyes might be so messed up you can't even see what you're looking at because your eyes get so messed up. So this neuro-ocular syndrome or SANS, it could be a thing that they start the process of figuring it out now, and then in like the years in the future, they could figure out how to stop it before it starts and also how to fix it. So the EVA suit, it looks kind of like a regular IVA suit, but it's way more tech. And the Polaris Dawn program, of course, has Jared Isaacman, Scott Petit, Sarah Gillis, and Anna Menon, who are going to be flying on this thing. And they're going to be influential for the future of spaceflight altogether. I mean, Inspiration 4 was a huge deal, but Polaris Dawn, that's taken it up to like 20 out of 10. It's huge. And EVA, commercial EVA, like no one's ever done this before. Private EVA, no one's done it. So what I want to talk about now is when you get done with these EVAs, the spaceflight, tourism spaceflight, SpaceX is going to put everybody out of business that's doing this now because they have everything. Of course, we know SpaceX's Starship will be going to the moon. We know SpaceX Starship eventually will go to Mars. But in between the moon and Mars, SpaceX has to figure out how to put people in the Starship in low Earth orbit to send them to the moon and Mars. And how do you do that? You test things like EVAs in a Dragon capsule where it's already built. Starship can't send people yet. It can barely get to orbit. I mean, it did a great job with IFT 3 and upcoming IFT 4, but nobody's going to get in that thing for a while. And these Dragon capsule tests, I mean, I don't know how many more Jared is going to try to do with Polaris program, but right now you have three of them planned. So we have the Polaris program, which eventually they have, Polaris Dawn, mission 2, and then mission 3. They don't have names for mission 2 and 3 yet. This is mission 2. Building upon the Polaris Dawn, this mission will continue to expand the boundaries of human spaceflight missions, in-space communications, and scientific research. So basically, Polaris Dawn, which is the first one, they're going to take all that data that they get from the first one. They've got like, what can we do that's better than this? What can we do to add to this and to make the next flight even more robust? So every lesson they learned from the mission 1, they're going to put towards mission 2. And then for mission 3, this will be the first human spaceflight on a Starship. And this will be something that you could book in the future. So the first human spaceflight on Starship, mission 3, Polaris Starship mission. I don't know what they're going to call it, but it seems like that's where everybody's headed. So the first human spaceflight on Starship, they're going to human rate Starship. NASA has to human rate Starship so they can send people to the moon in it. And will mission 3 of Polaris program be a lunar Starship, or will it be the crew Starship that sends people to Mars? Okay, so the crew Starship have a big window, a bunch of windows, have like places to hang out. They'll have an inside of the Starship where you could fly around. I guess not fly, you could float around. And there will be, there will be a galley, a cafe, like everything you need. Sleeping quarters, you have your own little quarters to hang out in, communications, things like it. Kind of like if you go on a cruise, or if you go on how about this? This is even better. So it's sort of like if you mashed up a cruise and a submarine, or an airliner, I guess would be a better way to put it. But you're in the tube. You're basically in a 777 or something. It's big. It's quite large. 9 meters around, 30 feet around. It's huge. And you get that all to yourself and like a few other people. But it's a cramped area. You're in there with a bunch of people, and it's not an open tube. There's going to be life support systems, a bunch of things around you, but it's going to be a great place to test things in low Earth orbit for Polaris program, and then move you off to the moon and Mars and beyond. But the first one is going to be the Polaris mission 3. Now, I know everybody's thinking like, okay, so Polaris mission, cool, great. What does that matter? Well, it matters because right now you can book a mission with SpaceX to go to low Earth orbit. And eventually, if you have enough money, and this is human rated for long duration spaceflight, and they finally figure out how to fuel this up in low Earth orbit, you're going to be able to go to Mars. You're going to be able to fly you and a bunch of friends to Mars. You might not want to land on Mars because it's dangerous. It's horrible there. It's horrible. Like Mars is like it's one of the worst places to live. And that's why we don't live there, because it's one of the worst places. It's like going to the top of Mount Everest and trying to live. Like it's almost impossible. People die all the time going to Everest, like climbing up Everest and sometimes coming back down. They might make the peak, but coming back down Everest, some people die. And when you go to Mars, there's no oxygen, sort of like Everest. It's super cold in places like Everest. It's extremely dangerous to get there, which is also getting to the top of Everest. And I'm just making this comparison because I know people, it's an extremely difficult thing to do. So people have done it, but it took a few brave people with the resources to do it the first few times. And once they did it, other people were like, oh, they can do that. I can do that too. I have some money. I got some resources. I think I could climb that mountain. You hire the right people to take you up there, which would be Jared's new program, which trains astronauts and then sends them wherever they're going to go. And also you work with SpaceX for Starship integration, and then you're good to go, which would take you months to get there, 6 to 9 months to get to Mars. Then you have to take 6 to 9 months to get back. So you're going to be in this tube for about a year. That's why I was kind of combining the submarine and an airliner and sort of like a cruise, because they're all things that you do that have life support systems, but also you're in a tube for a year or more. Like it doesn't, or a year and a half or something, if you just go to Mars and come back. But you're probably going to want to go to Mars, do a couple laps, do a couple of orbits, spend a month in orbit. I don't know. That would be great. That'd be great. I'm not going to be the person that does this. Let me know in the comments if you're the person that does this, because I'm not going to be that person. So what I want to do is I want to figure out who would do this. If you had unlimited resources, unlimited money, would you go to Mars on a Starship? Would you be one of the first people? Let's put it that way. Let's do that. Would you be one of the first people to go to Mars? That would be incredible. You'd be a pioneer, and you would be in the history books. You could become a hero for all of humanity. So think about that. If you have the money to do it, is your ego big enough? If it's just an adventure thing, you're just like, man, I just want to go to Mars. How sick would that be? That would be cool, right? That'd be fun. But if it's an ego thing where you're like, you know what? I got nothing else better going on. This is my way to make a contribution. That's cool too. That's cool too. I think that's great. I couldn't do it myself personally. So I think you are way more brave than me if you think you could do it. So let me know in the comments. So we don't know how much this is going to cost either. So a Starship could possibly go for, Elon said it's going to take a couple million, like 20 million to launch a Starship, which is incredibly low, maybe up to 100 million to launch a Starship. So if you got 25 million, Elon has to make profit too. So say if you have 50 million, you get 4 people to go with you. You're going to need a captain, somebody who's in charge, of course. You're going to have people, everybody has to know how to work all the systems kind of. You have to have people that are, like a doctor. You have to have somebody who's in charge of the food and like a bunch of different people. It's sort of like going on a Star Trek ship. Everybody has their duty. Like you're in a submarine or you're in an air flight, like in an airliner where there's a pilot, co-pilot, etc. And it's sort of like the International Space Station, because basically what you're doing is flying a space station, a mini space station to Mars. It's going to take a while to get there. You need all the systems. Everything needs to work flawlessly for 6 to 9 months to get there. How do you do that? You get the right people to do the right jobs. If anything happens, can you 3D print a part, or do you bring extra parts with you? How heavy are those parts? If one part fails, what's the redundancy? It's a complicated mess, when you think about it, because starships are big. They're giant things. They're 150 feet tall, possibly bigger in the future, according to Elon. So who does the work? So you're going to have. I'm guessing. This is another thing we can talk about in the comments too. I'm guessing minimum 6 people going to Mars, minimum, possibly 10. The thing is huge. Starship is huge. So think about, because you're not going to have a whole 150 feet of motion between the top of the Starship and where everybody hangs out. There's numerous videos about the interior of Starship and how it works. SpaceX released something a long time ago about the interior of Starship too. So if you could dig that up, try to find that too. That's pretty interesting. But people have also made their own renderings. We have a video from a long time ago, a couple years ago, focusing and showcasing the interior of the Starship. I have a bunch of YouTube shorts about it too. We had a great graphic artist, Porky, helping us out. And he's that Pork Roll? No, Pork Roll's the guy that I play games with. I forgot. I'm sorry. So anyway, sorry to the artist. I think it's Pork Roll. I don't know. I think Porky's the guy we play games with. Anyway, that's beside the point. So there's a bunch of interior renderings and videos about that, and SpaceX will make sure that everything's taken care of before you fly to Mars. So part of that is getting to the moon, flying people to the moon, making sure all the systems work there, and then making it even better, because you can have systems that go to the moon. And some of these things, like, we might not go to Mars for the next 20 years. And I don't want to be one of those people. I'm not a naysayer. I just know how fast technology works. And especially space flight. How long did it take SpaceX to get a ISS rated Falcon and Crew Dragon? It took them a little while, right? It took them years to do that. So Starship could be human rated for the moon, but going all the way to Mars, there's massive amounts of radiation in between here and Mars. How do you shield for that? I'm sure they're working on that in the background. How do you shield for that? How do you make sure that everyone's okay? Do you line the walls with water? People were talking about that for a while. Water is really heavy, really, really heavy. So I don't think that's going to be a possibility. What kind of materials can you use? Is there just going to be a radiation bunker somewhere in the place where everybody kind of hunkers down while a big radiation storm comes through or something? That's a possibility. They did that. They did that in the ISS. They do that, or not in the ISS. They do that with some concepts for lunar landing and also for long duration space flight. NASA has done concepts about that in the past. So there's a possibility that they have a bunker in the Starship, and that would eradicate like a bunch of fears for people, especially with radiation. And then the rest of the ship could be rated for radiation, long duration spaceflight radiation. There we go. It's a long one. So I don't know. Would you take that flight? It's going to be tens, maybe $100 million. If you had the money, would you do it? I think there's a possibility. And I think Jared Isaacman is going to train the astronauts that go to Mars, or go to Mars himself, be the first person to go to Mars. I don't know if it's going to be a nation. I think it might be Jared. I think he's going to be the first person to do that, to go around Mars, to fly around Mars and come back. He's an explorer. He's a thrill seeker. He's very tempered, very well spoken, very calm, great demeanor. So him being in charge of everybody, and being the commander of the first Starship to go to Mars. I mean, if he's the commander of the first Starship in orbit, first human-rated Starship in orbit, that's the first step. And maybe he'll go around the moon for the first time. I don't know. It would be great if he does all these things. Maybe he's the explorer we need. Maybe we need Jared to do all these things. So Jared could go low Earth orbit in Starship, go around the moon in Starship before Dear Moon, maybe? I don't know. Maybe. We'll see. And then maybe go around Mars. But Dear Moon, I know, not looking too good, Dear Moon. Not looking too good. But I don't know. If Jared is going to be competitive enough, he'll pay whatever he can pay. But Dear Moon seems like, I mean, there's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 people that go to Dear Moon. And Dear Moon has been postponed as well. You know, they started it in 2018 and they wanted to launch in 2023 with Starship in 2023. Could you imagine that? We all know that Starship is far away from launching anybody to the moon, years away from launching anybody to the moon. Even Artemis, the NASA program, it's slated for like 2030-ish now. So they wanted 2023, of course, very ambitious flight timeline, but 2030, that's more realistic. But even then, 6 years from now, getting Starship human rated, Jared's going to be one of the first people to do that. And then once they figure that out, send somebody around the moon before they send NASA astronauts. I don't know. I don't know if NASA would be okay with that. They probably would, but I mean, what is NASA? NASA just a customer of SpaceX? I don't know if they'd be mad or not, but if you're Elon, you can't make one of your best customers upset with you due to these politics. I don't know. So would they send a private astronaut crew before a NASA astronaut crew around the moon on a Starship? I don't know, because it's just it's a weird thing. So SpaceX and Dear Moon project, of course, postponed until they figure out how to do it. They're upgrading everything as we speak. Flight 4 of Starship coming up soon, TM, middle of the month, maybe. We'll see. But they're doing testing right now with the ship, and they're doing the booster. And hopefully soon they'll get the FAA approval to do a Starship flight. I think that would be wonderful. So let me know down in the comments. Would you fly to Mars? Would you pay enough money to fly to Mars? One of the first people to fly to Mars. Would that be you? Okay. Thanks, everybody, for all the support. Take care of yourselves and each other. Make sure to subscribe. Oh, yeah, I got to do this before I go. If you like space flight content, if you made it this far, it was 30 minutes in or something. If you like this kind of content, please take a second, hit the subscribe button, and also hit the like button, because if you hit the subscribe button, you're going to get more spaceflight content, not just from this channel, but from other spaceflight channels in your feed. And also leave a comment that'll help YouTube recognize that you like spaceflight, and you'll get more spaceflight creators in your feed. So take care of each other, everybody. There we go. And I will see you in the next one. Okay. There we go. That was a hard thing to say at the end there. I don't like to sign off. Okay. Bye.